So in this video, we get rid of some old rubbish, we make some gaskets, we silver solder a few things, and the apprentice enters stage right. Back up in the garage. Yeah, and the apprentice is here. Hello. Hello and welcome to Tweed's Garage. In this video we're looking at my 1929 Riley 9 Monaco, and I'm trying to get it ready for a car show, the Basingstoke Transport Festival 2026, and I started to undertake the job of taking off the old single Zenith and fitting a set of twin SUs. And the last time you saw me, I'd taken the Zeniths off and started the game of trying to get the twin SU set up to fit this Riley. They had been on a Riley before, but there were a few differences, things that needed to be sorted out, and I only had a week to sort it out. So I'm going to tell you how I got this far, and then we'll see where we make it to the show. Last time I said I had to make up some new studs for the mounting the manifold onto the engine. Needed shorter ones because these ones on this manifold, the manifold bolted inside the manifold onto the cylinder head, whereas on the previous one the studs came through both sides of the manifold and then there was a nut on the outside. So you had, yeah, sort of 4 possible leaks rather than 3 as you do here with just the, you know, mounted on the engine and the 2 carburetors. On the old one it had mounted on the engine, the 1 leak, carburetor, 2 leaks, 2 studs coming through, 4 leaks. So this is an improvement. So turned up new studs. Right, let's just clean these holes up first. Five 16th BSF. Don't want to clean them up too much. And get the studs on. We'll be making a start. As before, double nut them. About there. Right, 1 new stud in, and then just undo that one. There we go, 2 studs. We've made a start. Can actually hang the manifold on there now, and I'm sure I've got a spare gasket. If not, I'll have to make one. Right, onwards and upwards. On the carburetors, we're not going to worry about the chokes for now, the choke linkages and all that, because I was talking to an old Riley boy that's got these on his Riley, and he doesn't worry about the choke levers. He just pops the bonnet and floods the carb like you do on a motorcycle and starts it that way till it gets warm. You know, because these cars at the moment we're not running them in the winter, so shouldn't need too much choke to get them up and running, and then maybe at a later date sort the linkages out for the choke levers. The main thing I need to do is get fuel in, so need to turn up some banjos without this sort of end on to go on here, one on here with solder fittings. So I'm going to have a piece of copper tube, not sure where I'm going to do it, so I'll come down here, maybe a T, and then the other one going under the carbs over to that side, but that's further down the road. First thing I've got to do is make these banjos. I've got some brass in the lathe that I'll show you that we're making the fittings out of. So I need one there, and they need to have a recess on the inside of them to allow the fuel round to go down these holes here. So I've got some brass stock that we'll silver solder onto them once we turn these bits up, turn these spigots up to go on there, and then silver solder them together, and then we can solder the copper tubes in. So there's that to do, and make up some sort of beefy flange nuts to bolt the manifold down, which I'm halfway through here. You've seen me turn nuts up before, so I've just turned up a bit of stainless steel, down to size, tapped and drilled it, drilled and tapped it, and just worked out my sizes to mill 6 flats on. So as I've told you before, you measure the diameter of your bar, measure the distance between your 2 flats, take that away from the diameter of your bar, divide by 2, and then that will give you the amount you need to take off of each side, each of the 6 sides, to give you your nut so that your spanner will fit. Okay, so we're going to go and do that. Down to the mill. So hoping to get 2 banjos out of this scrap piece of brass I had lying around. So we bored the inside out to go in the fittings like that, and then there's a bit of a recess on the outside edge for the fibre washer to drop down into and tighten up, and it doesn't foul the nut that sits inside it. That's fine. The back side will be flush, just to press against the fibre washer, against the body of the carburetor there, but we can't have a recess because it will foul here and here, so we just have a flat surface on the back. So that's easy enough. So what I'm going to do on these now is put a little recess on the inside, as I said, for the fuel to flow round and then go down the hole. Doesn't matter, you know, what position it is, the fuel is still coming through the spigot, work its way round and into the carburetor. So I'll do that. And then once I've done that, part this off, then face and recess the next bit, bore it out on the inside, and then part that off as well. And that will give us our 2 pieces, which I'll move to the mill to drill them. And then turn the spigots up to fit in there and get silver soldered on. And then just pop them back in the lathe, because I had a little issue on one of them. I've made the tube that goes into the banjo a little bit over generous, and it broke through on the face of where one of the fibre washers sits. But once I'd silver soldered it and then popped it in the lathe and turned it back, you couldn't even see where the join was, where the tube came into it. So that was all fine and dandy. The other one, I'd sort of reduced the size of the tube a little bit. That's why it's got a step in it, just so it didn't break through when I drilled the main part of the banjo. So it's starting to get a bit tricky. The way the carbs were set up, they had the throttle linkage lever in the middle between the 2 carbs here. Unfortunately, on my Riley, all the throttle linkage levers are towards the back of the engine rather than the middle. I could sort of move the arm round, but then that would reverse the action of the lever. So this way it pulls down, the other way when you push the throttle down it'd be pushing up, and there's not enough room to move this lever around the other way to change the direction. So what I've done is I took this off of this carb, and then swapped it with the other one to move this. This is now the left-hand carburetor, so this is outside like so. So the throttle is now over here and the right direction. But I had to move the fuel bowl into the middle, which isn't ideal. It's nicer on the other side, and then move this one to the outside where it was. It's close to the magneto, but there's enough clearance, so it's not a problem there. And the tops are sort of handed different ways, but that doesn't matter too much either, because I'm going to drop the copper tubes down and round the back underneath the carburetors, under the manifold, to keep it sort of tidy. So there's that to do. But unfortunately, where I've moved these levers around, they've got, they've been drilled by eye on both of them, and multiple drillings. So the brass rod has got a load of holes through it and sort of different angles, and I want to try and think of some way of cleaning that up. I might tap and thread it and silver solder some brass in there, cut it off, machine it back, and then re-drill it. I think that might be an option, but at the moment had enough of jiggling carbs around. So I'm going to do this plate for the exhaust, with a flange around it so it won't go anywhere. I've done my drawings here, worked my sizes out, so I'm going to cut this plate and roughly down size, mill it square, pop it in a 4-jaw chuck, and then hopefully bore these 2 circular recesses, and like I said, join them up on the mill. So I'm going to do this now and have a little think about the throttle shafts and the levers whilst I'm doing it. Right, let's go and do that. And then just pop it in the mill and clean up the sides. got the blanking plate bolted up with its gasket to hopefully seal the exhaust gases from coming out of there and going down the exhaust. And also it gives, you know, nice bit of clearance round the back of the engine because it was quite tight with those heat tubes in there. I decided I've got to swap the throttle levers around on the spindles, and they've been, yeah, badly drilled. This one, that one's not too bad. This one they've missed and come through there, which isn't brilliant. But swapping these over, these holes you can see on these shafts, that one's sort of on the edge there, and that one breaks through a little bit there, which isn't great. And they were just sort of had steel pins hammered in, and of course they just distorted around because the holes don't line up very well. But in an engineer's tool chest I was kindly given, there was this pot of roll pins here, and I've got these 1/8 inch roll pins which will fit in these holes in the levers. And then what I'm going to do is, being from my brass offcuts and bits and bobs, going to turn up some little threaded rods. I'll tap these as well, and then put a bit of brass threaded bar in each of them, and then just silver solder them up, file them down a bit, pop them in the lathe and just face them off, and then I can pop these levers in and position them where I want them, and then re-drill them and pop the split pins in, and we should be getting there. So just use those roll pins, just tap them in to hold the throttle levers in position, and that sorted that out. That came out really well, really pleased with that. So that was the 2 throttles sorted out. Then the next thing I needed to do, because the rods weren't long enough, was I turned up a little brass shaft extension. So drilled it out one end to fit over the one shaft, and then turned it the back end of it down to the diameter of the shafts on both sides. So then that would fit into my little flexi coupling. You know, just machined it, made it look nice, and then secured that like the throttle levers with an 1/8 inch roll pin. So that was the throttles all sorted out, ready to be bolted onto the car. Right, Amazon have come up trumps. 5/16 pipe, a couple of straight couplers and a T-coupler on a bank holiday Monday. So this is progress so far. I was working into the evening last night, so got the studs made, manifold bolted to the block, and the carbs mounted, all the copper fuel tube in fitted loosely. I've got to do up all the unions on the T-fitting and the fuel fitting here, but they're all soldered into the banjos, and everything's waiting just to be nipped down. And then this is a view from the top. So we've got the throttles linked together. They will need sort of balancing and sorting out once I get it running. So I've got that little sprung joint between the two just to take up any play, because these don't mount perfectly flat. There's a little bit of twist on them. I got them positioned as best I could. So yeah, there's that and that. Move the float bowls around a bit. This one was, well, they were swapped over, and one was over here, but it would have fouled the throttle linkage on this side. So yeah, the advantage with these SUs is you can put them on whatever side you like. Just swap the tops around to get a better run for the pipe work. Down below, this one drops down just below the carb, round the back, and then forwards here, with this one dropping straight down into the T-piece and out, and then into the fuel tank. We've got a sort of nicer line on the fuel line there, so it's clear, plenty clear of the bonnet, and a bit of rubber in there just to take out any vibration. So looking pretty snazzy. If I do get time, I will attempt to put some brass tops on, but that's sort of cosmetic really. The main thing is to get it running, leaving the chokes this way at the moment, because I'm not planning to put a choke cable on if I don't need to. As I said before, talking to a couple of Riley people, they just flood the carbs like you do on a motorcycle, and that gets them up and running just and warmed up, and doesn't seem to be a problem. So we won't worry too much about that at the moment. So that was the fuel done, got the linkages, well, the levers and linkages done. So the last thing to do then was to connect the throttle pedal to the carburetors. And in the little stash of bits and bobs I've been given was a long sort of throttle arm or link arm that had a ball joint at each end, female ball joint at each end. Lovely little things. They've got beautiful little spring clips on them and little tabs, and you sort of, I couldn't see because they were all mucky, so I gave the assembly a good wire brushing off and cleaned it up, and then discovered it's got these two little tabs. You just sort of fold the little tabs back and they just ease out that sort of saddle clip, which allows it then to release from the ball joint. Just drops out like that, and you just pop it back and you just spring those little ears back, and the saddle clip comes in and locks in under the ball joint. Beautiful little mechanism, simple, elegant, and it works. And of course I have seen these sort of ball joint cups with these spring clips missing and never been able to work out what was on there, but now having seen them, yeah, they're a really nice thing. And you just wouldn't get something like that nowadays. I mean, I don't know how they stamped out the tiny little handles that go around the spring clips. So because the rod that I had was really long, and it's not off of anything in particular, it's not valuable in any way, it's just a standard piece of 1/4 inch steel bar. So I chopped it in half down to the length I needed, put a thread on the other end, and then put the other cup joint on the bottom, and then that gave me my throttle linkage from the pedal all the way up through this rod here, over the jack shaft, over the top of the steering box, and then onto the carbs over there. And then the last thing to do was, although I've got a spring on the throttle cable, on the throttle lever down here, I don't know if you can see because the mirror might be in the way, but there's a spring, there's a return spring on the steering box that pulls the pedal lever back to the off position. But the trouble is, if one of these rose joints popped off the carburetors, they don't have springs on them. You can get them, so I might order, there's a couple of little bits and sort of spares I want. When I've done the car show, I'll order a couple of gaskets for the float bowls, and then these sort of safety return springs that go on the throttle levers here and here. But the trouble is, to fit those, I've got to take all the carbs back together again. So I haven't got time to do that now, so we'll do that next time. So for now, what I've done was made a bracket up here that goes on the rocker cover bolt at the back here, just a piece of steel flat bar, turned round so the angle's right for the spring. Found a spring here that returns the carbs back to their stop position. The reason you have that is if one of these ball joints pops off and you disconnect from this part of the throttle linkage, those carbs will just sit open. You know, you won't be able to shut them down. There's no natural return for them. So this is why, yeah, like the Vintage Sports Car Club and that, they always say your carburetors have got to have their own return springs, even if there's one, you know, like here on the steering box. That's why you've got to have them on the carburetors, because if any of the linkages break, yeah, the carbs, you can just, you know, rev away, nothing to stop them going full chat sort of thing. So it's a safety thing. So yeah, just got this spring on here, and that's just enough tension to pull those carbs shut if, you know, if anything popped off. So that was all that done. I was quite happy with that. So there it was a case of seeing whether it fired up. We did have a few petrol leaks that were making me pull my hair out and swear about modern fibre washers. Yeah, they're just, I don't know, they're just not as good as the old ones. They must have taken something nasty out of them, because they're just a nightmare to get to seal now. So it was this carburetor top here, the back one, it was leaking around the banjo. No matter how tight you done it, different washers you put on it, it just wouldn't seal up. And then when I took the float bowl top off and looked at the surface of it where the fibre washer sits on, where the aluminium's so old, obviously it used to be flat, but obviously it's corroded over the years and being cleaned up. It was really rough, a really rough surface with sort of ridges and trenches in it. It's minuscule ones, but enough for a fibre washer to bridge, you know, but not squash into. So I took them off, put them on a flat stone, and faced both of them, which is sort of, you know, worth doing actually. So cleaned them so they're a nice flat surface, nice and clean engineered surface, and popped them back together with well seal as well. I did check whether well seal will work with petrol, and it says it does. So every fibre washer, every surface got a coating of well seal, and then they're all bolted up, and they have been really good now. But then I was getting this carburetor again was flooding. It kept flooding, couldn't stop it flooding. At first I thought it might be the float, but the floats, it didn't have any petrol in it. They're quite heavy anyway, so they sit quite low down. But I think what was happening was the fingers that operate, the little sort of stirrup that operates the float, sits on top of the float, and then the needle valve sits in the middle of it like this, and it moves up and down like that with the float, and it sort of shuts off the fuel, and when it drops back down, opens the fuel back up again. But when the float's down initially, it's at quite an angle, and when it comes up, it's pushing it sideways, and the needle valve, you know, tilts over a little bit, and then it's got to slide up this surface, you know. So there is a possibility, you know, of it jamming that way, but not really, because they are new needle jets in there. What it was there was a lot of corrosion, a lot of rust, and it was a very rough surface on the top of this stirrup. And I think what was happening is it's been pushed over an angle, and it was just jamming like that, and it wouldn't slide up anymore. It was just getting stuck. So cleaned the top of it off, emery clothed it down so it's a nice smooth surface, popped it all back together. It's been fine ever since. So yeah, something worth looking at if your old SUs are flooding a lot and you've replaced the needle valves, is just check the surface on that little stirrup at the top. You know, if they're a bit rusty or manky, give them a clean. But they're probably, that was the other thing I was going to order. Yeah, new little stirrups for the floats, and a couple of little float bowl washers there. And that was it. And then it was just a case of, it starts really nicely. Once the magneto's got a bit of charge into it, away she goes. No trouble at all. We'll sit there ticking over lovely. you know, and it was always with the old Zenith, it was always a, you know, balancing act of playing with the timing and faffing about with the throttle and leaving, you know, moving the fast idle up to so it wouldn't die. So yeah, really, really pleased with how well it runs. So it's just a case of balancing the carbs up. So I've done that with one of those flow gauges. This one, I'll show you in another video how we do it. One of these, like that. I'll demonstrate it. Yeah, like that. So you just pop it on that carburetor when it's sitting there idling or a fast idle, and then you check your where your indicator is here, and then you just pop it. And it even works on these inch carburetors, although they're tiny. Just pop it on there. It doesn't need a lot of pressure. Just pop it on there, check what the reading is there, you know, go between the two, and then it's a case of disconnecting the flexi couple on one side, and then just adjusting this carburetor to run about just over about 3.5, and with that set, just go over to this one, but you do have to hold that one shut with your finger because it's not connected to the other one. But this one's got all the linkage on everything, and then go to that one and then adjust that one till they're both running the same, and then just re-secure the flexi coupling between the two, and that should have your carbs balanced quite nicely. Yeah, so I think there's a few other jobs to do, you know, just sort of check oil levels, that kind of thing, check the water, oil levels are right, check the water, lubricate the universal joint, pump the tyres up. But I was looking at it, and the one thing that was annoying me was the tops on these carburetors, although it's got the earlier float bowls and the earlier dampers, because that threw me a bit. I took the dash pots off expecting a spring in there, and it was like, oh no, they're missing the springs. What, I've got to get springs, and what size, you know, what type of spring do you get? What colour springs do you get? There's so many. But then I've done a little search online, and these earlier SU carburetors, the slider, it holds the needle, can't think of the term for it at the moment. On these earlier carbs, it's got a big steel weight in the middle of it, so it relies on weight to bring it back down, whereas the later carbs were just aluminium with no weight, and then they had springs on. But you, with the advantage was you could change the springs for different damping rates. So yeah, so they don't have springs in, so that was okay. Topped up the dash pots, but the only thing didn't like was the top of the dash pots had the later style black sort of knobbly dash pot tops, like you got in your Mini, Metro, right to the end I think they had them. So I did have some older style ones. I couldn't work out how to fit the damper rod into, you know, some brass tops, whether they were pushed in, and one hole was bigger on one than the other. So what I'd done was I just stuck the plastic ones with the rod in the lathe and just turned off the finger grip edges on the outside. Just turned that down. They turned down really nicely down to 21 millimeters, and then just faced off the top face just to take the writing off because I wanted the surface as flat as possible. And with that done, with a piece of brass, turned up two covers, sort of fake covers. So bored them out to 21 millimeters, 3 millimeters deep, which was the depth of the tops before the little shoulder. And then they're 4 millimeters in thickness total, so just a millimeter on the top thickness. But before I parted them off, I just knurled the outside of the piece of the brass at its finished size to give that nice knurling. And actually, yeah, that went all right. Yeah, two things that will ruin a job in the workshop. One, the milling machine. Yeah. I didn't tell you about that, did I? Had a different size lever, because the trouble is the lever for the Zenith is a lot longer, and the throw would have been too much for these SUs. And I was given, with the bits I was given a shorter arm, and it's exactly right. It must be 4SU carburetor on a Riley. It was exactly the right length, but I was going to drill and tap it to take the bottom ball joint. So took the arm, popped it in a toolmaker's vise that I've got, and then stood that in a milling vise, clamped that up. Being conscientious, put a machinist jack underneath the arm where I was drilling so it wouldn't bend down. And yeah, forgot, brassy bronze stuff, very grabby. I should have put a clamp on the top of it, but you know, I was only drilling a tiny little hole, thought it would be fine. But yeah, this luckily didn't destroy it completely, just popped it in the vise. Normally, as I should have done first time, I was just trying to get both holes in line with each other. Don't know why I bothered. So yeah, just clamped the nose of it and then dropped a milling cutter down just the clearance hole for the thread on the ball joint. Done that, cleaned the hole up very nicely, and then dropped the ball joint in, nut on the back, popped it all in. Job done. Wouldn't know, but yeah, bloody hell. Yeah, so what was I saying? Yeah, two things that will destroy your bloody job in the workshop: milling machine and knurling. Never have a lot of luck with knurling, but it went okay. So yeah, knurled these, parted them off, and then they're a nice tight push fit. So put some araldite on the plastic tops, push the brass tops on, and the little breather hole on the plastic top underneath. Let any excess glue splurge out on each of them. So then the last thing to do was to pop these in the milling vise. Luckily with the shaft on, they fitted down between the jaws and sat on top. And then measured out from the centre, I think it's 0.1835 to where the original breather hole was, and just sort of done it on the opposite side of where the original one was. Just drilled a hole through the brass, through the plastic, and that gave me my breather hole on both of the caps. And then just screwed them on, and there you go. I think they look the part, and we're nearly there. Will we make it? So, did we make it? Well, as you can see, bonnet is closed, tools have gone from the footboard, the apprentice is down here, and yeah, we had a successful trip to the Basingstoke Transport Festival, and a good day it was too. So packed the family, picnic table, thermos flasks and the picnic box into the back of Gladstone, and we headed round to the showground in the morning, and he behaved himself in the traffic. We didn't get towed in this year, drove all the way into our pitch along with a good selection of vintage cars, which was nice to see this year because it's sort of an ageing interest, shall we say. But it was a good day. Yeah, we put the sign on, you know, letting anybody sit in it if they wanted to. They just needed to ask. So we had a sort of steady traffic of boys, girls, ladies and gentlemen sitting in the Riley and taking it all in and enjoying it, and met a lot of viewers for the channel, and it's always nice to meet up with you. And a special mention out to Jason, who came up all the way from Littlehampton, and his son in separate cars, strangely. But anyway, yeah, they came along, and yeah, saw Bob. Nice to see you, Bob. He's doing well, and he gave me a pinwheel drill guide for finding your tapping and clearance drills when you're tapping holes. But I'll show you that in another video. In the meantime, here's Gladstone at the showground being enjoyed by the general public and subscribers of the channel.
Nothing you ever buy, they call it better.
There you go, we made it to the Transport Festival successfully and returned home within a week of effort of getting those carburetors on, linked up and connected to fuel, all that kind of thing. And he runs really well. So here's a couple of shorts that we shot, if you didn't see them, with Watty filming from the outside and from the inside for your viewing pleasure. And as you can see in here, sounds really nice, runs really well, runs a lot better. Yeah, vast improvement. And yes, we'll sort you out later. And much more of a pleasure to drive. Yeah, we have discovered that the brakes are not as effective as they were with the previous carburettor on, but hopefully they'll bed in, and I need to do some more adjustment on them to try and get a bit more bite on them. But yeah, you know, they make these cars to go, don't make them to stop. Okay, that's it for now. He needs feeding and he won't leave me alone. So till the next video, I'll see you again. All right. Oh yeah, and just a thank you again to subscribers of the channel and viewers and all the people that turned up to say hello. All right. Okay, see you in another video. Cheerio. Come on in, Muttley. Let's go.